God, she's dying up there.
He's All That is mediocre. As Netflix's most recent movie release, it's a gender swap remake of the 1999's box office hit She's All That. Both of these films are written by R. Lee Fleming Jr., so it comes across as somewhat of a surprise just how bad it is. And maybe I'm only speaking through the lens of nostalgia, seeing as how I first watched She's All That when I was in elementary school. And it took me down a rabbit hole of what are known as the 80s and early 90s coming-of-age movies, such as The Breakfast Club, 16 Candles, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, etc. Which are all good movies aside from the misogyny and sexism, but I'm getting a little ahead of myself here. He's All That is a film about a girl named Padgett. And yes, that is her real name. Who is played by Addison Rae, a famous TikTok star, in real life, not in the movie. It's similar to the original plotline, except more focused around social media. In the beginning, we're shown how Padgett lives in a home with her single mother whom she's ashamed of, played by Rachel Cook, who had the leading role in She's All That. Padgett's mother is a nurse, and oh, how humiliating. Can't let anyone else know that, or else that's a one-way ticket on the train heading to social suicide. And we all know that being a nurse is one of the worst, most embarrassing occupations, right there below dirty politician. Poor Padgett, an online beauty influencer, pretends to live in an expensive apartment just so that she won't seem so, well, poor. She meets up with her friends so that they can go and pay her boyfriend Jordan a visit. He just so happens to be a recording artist with a lot of followers, except that when she gets to his trailer on his set, she walks in on him cheating with another girl. Cue the raging and screaming, but oh no! The whole thing is being recorded on Padgett's phone that just so happens to be streaming live to all of her followers. Now, she'd had a completely normal reaction, but instead of getting sympathy from the public, Padgett is instead ostracized, loses thousands of followers, and gets dumped by all of her sponsors. All because of the fact that she got angry and was guilty of SWC, aka snotting while crying. Most notable offenders being Viola Davis. So, yikes, lock her up. Which makes this whole situation completely normal. Yes, absolutely nothing wrong with that whatsoever, makes complete sense. I mean, not that I'd know, seeing as how I am neither a sponsor nor an influencer, and all of this somehow leads to Padgett making a bet with her fake mean girl, the best friend, that she will be able to make over any nerd that said evil sycophant, who is only mean for the plot, chooses. Padgett's excuse for doing this is that if she succeeds and films the process, then both her and whatever sad, lonely, never spoken to a girl nerd will win prom king and queen, which will make Padgett gain all of her lost followers and sponsors back because of reasons. Even without seeing the original film, or hell, without even reading the synopsis of this one, it's entirely predictable, and kind of offensive if you think about these stereotypes. Let's talk about Padgett herself. She's what we all know as a typical popular girl in school, and that's kind of it. There really isn't a whole lot of depth to her character beyond that. And sure, we can argue and speculate that she's insecure, which she is, because she feels the need to pretend to be rich and make people think that she lives in a more expensive home than the nice one she already has. And yes, part of that reason could be because of the fact that she's growing up addicted to social media and is pressured by society to believe that the number of followers she has is a direct implication of her value, especially once she loses a majority of them. But none of this is explored in the movie. All we get are shots of her engaging with her followers, stalking so-called loser and unaware victim Cameron, and TikTok dances. Lots of TikTok dances. It all feels very shallow because it is very shallow. Where does her motivation stem from? Why is she so ashamed of her mother? What are her fears behind her losing followers? Padgett is a character who suffers from what I like to call glass syndrome. Everything about her is about as deep as a half-empty glass of water. She could have been something better, something meaningful. If only she'd been written with anything other than a stale, broken pen running low on ink. This is Addison Rae's first time ever gracing a 24-inch television screen in her living room, and it shows. While she's not terrible for her first official acting gig, her skills aren't quite up to the par of carrying an entire film. It's seen in any shot that doesn't involve her looking pretty on camera. So, I suppose that it's better that her character didn't get a lot of emotional depth. Addison doesn't have any facial range beyond fake smiles, delivers lines in a very stale way that I haven't seen since my first year of acting class, doesn't quite know what to do with her hands when she's on screen other than standing awkwardly or flailing about overdramatically. And while that may seem harsh, we have to remember here that she hasn't acted before in any official medium, and her getting the lead role in a movie that she clearly wasn't prepared for took the opportunity away from someone who was. Somebody probably spent years and years and a crap ton of money honing their craft. Is that fair? I don't think so. Speaking of acting, let's move on to the film's love interest, Cameron. Played by Tanner Buchanan, who had a role in the Netflix series Cobra Kai. He kinda carries the weight of the movie on his back. However, he's all that doesn't actually give him any chance to display notable skills because his character is just as empty as my bank account. In fact, Cameron's traits only seem to revolve around being the woke outsider, horse boy photographer, one friend having loser in a synthetic wig. So, unlike Padgett, which I'm pretty sure if you say that name out loud 3 times in a row you'll lose 100 followers, Cameron at least had the chance to show some depth when it came to his estranged father and dead mother, even though we only get shown these parts of him briefly. Everything else we see of him is based solely on stereotypes that old people think a high school loser is like nowadays. A poor social media, would rather spend his days riding his horse on school lawns, getting throwaway advice from his sister. Honestly, he could have redeemed his whole character if he would have ditched Padgett at the end of the movie after finding out that she only talked to him because of a bet. At least that way, he wouldn't have had to sit through that god-awful dance number. I mean, what even was that? The only thing that we get to see him do is take boring pictures, pet a horse, and be ensnared by a girl he probably doesn't know how to spell the word boring without looking it up on Instagram. The main antagonist, outside of cheating ex-boyfriend Jordan, is Alden, played by Madison Pettis, who you might recognize as the child actor in The Game Plan who's all grown up now. She's been in other roles, but that's pretty much the only thing I recognize her from. As I stated earlier, Alden's character is nothing but the mean girl TM. She's the one who set up Padgett in the beginning of the movie by filming her screaming at Jordan. Now, Alden's motivations all stem around... To be completely honest, I don't even remember. And I watched the movie an hour ago. We don't get to see anything outside of her hooking up with Jordan behind Padgett's back and throwing a huge birthday party. She is, like everyone else in the movie, pointless. She doesn't add anything to the plot besides being the one to push Padgett into making the bet, only to make her reveal the plot to Cameron later on. I mean, she could have been replaced with a potato and nothing would have changed. I don't know anything about you, but I am so tired of mean girls being mean for the sake of plot. It would be one thing if there was an actual reason to hate the main character other than something stupid or what have you. Where are the villains who have a real, true reason to behave the way that they do? Where are the Jokers, the Lokis, the Darth Vaders, the Magnetos, the Regina Georges, the Miranda Priestleys? It's okay to write teenage mean girls who are mean for a reason. It's okay to let them have a backstory and motivations and depth. Why is it always a woman bullying another woman due to jealousy? Is that what these male writers think that women fight about? That the only reason for girl-on-girl hate is because they want their boyfriends? I understand that sometimes people are mean to others when they didn't do anything to them at all, but all that anger has to come from somewhere. Not because the person wore the same outfit as them to prom. There are a bunch of other side characters who I don't feel deserve a breakdown analysis, mostly because I don't remember their names and they're cookie cutter. Straight out of a can, ready to make biscuits without all the fun of scaring your mom when you pop open that bad boy loud enough to sound like gunshots. Yes. Even you, Kourtney Kardashian. My point is, why do we keep getting fed the same things over and over? Turn on most movies and shows on Netflix and you'd be able to predict the whole plot before the opening credits are over. What is going on in these writers' rooms? They sound like they're cringeworthy adults in their mid-50s trying to sound like they're young and hip with today's youth. But instead, these scripts read like Steve Buscemi holding a skateboard.
How do you do, fellow kids?
What?
They think that teenagers these days only care about followers and not depth. And it shows that these writers don't try to properly understand the topics that they're portraying. Why do we keep letting social media influencers with no substantial experience take opportunities away from people who work hard in their respective fields, only to never get a chance to make a name for themselves because someone with 1 million followers was given the gig instead? Sure, you could argue that it brings more awareness to whatever project that they're in, but then where would the line be drawn? If people without proper skills keep taking over these spaces, then the bar will get lower and lower for talent because it will become the norm, become basic, easy. Who exactly are the audience for films like The Kissing Booth, After, Sierra Burgess' The Loser? These movies are uninspiring, filled with cliches and shows of codependency, and influences children and teenagers in a very dangerous way. Perhaps the well of inspiration has run dry for movie creators. Or maybe they just think that things like these are perfectly fine to spend the money on making because they'll be consumed anyway. And yes, movies are allowed to be fun and stupid and have very simplistic message, but that doesn't mean that Mediocracy should get a pass.